Hi, I'm Jay Leeming, and this is the Crane Bag Podcast, episode number 8. Today we're going to enter the labyrinth of that great story collection known in English as the Arabian Nights. We're going to enter that labyrinth, and who knows if we will come out. Once there was a king who loved to fight battles. He loved to ride on a powerful horse across the desert sand, and to see all his armies before him, all his soldiers on their horses. He loved to yell, "Charge!" and see everyone pull out their swords at the same time, and he would hold his sword in the air, and the sun would glint on those metal blades, and ahead of them would be the enemy army, and they would race towards that army. He loved the furious clarity of that moment, of seeing the dust from the horses, seeing the swords, the distant army, the flags, the clouds in the sky, and knowing that at any moment one arrow in his chest could take everything away and leave him as a dead body in the sand. So he fought a lot of battles, and he was rarely at home. And he had a queen, a wife, but she became bored with this, and she became lonely. So there came a day when this king returned from a battle in which he'd been victorious. He returned to his palace, and there was his vizier, his chief minister, at the palace gate. And he had a troubled look in his face, and he said, "Your Majesty, I have hard news. Your wife, the queen, has run off with a prince from a distant kingdom. Some say they've gone out to sea, some say they've vanished into the mountains, but it's clear she is not coming back." Well, this made the king sad, but it also made him angry. And as the days went by, a thought formed in his heart and his mind, and it was, women cannot be trusted. So some time later he said to his vizier, "It is time for me to seek a queen." And the vizier said, "Yes, indeed, sire, it is indeed. For every kingdom needs a king and a queen, a man and a woman, to bring harmony to that place." "Yes, indeed," said the king, "but I have a special plan. I want you to choose me a wife from among the servant girls in this palace. Tomorrow morning we will be married. We will spend the day together, we will spend the night together, and the next morning she will be killed." "What?" said the vizier. "You're going to kill her the next day?" "Yes, indeed," said the king. "I will kill her so she can't run off with some prince from another kingdom, because I know women cannot be trusted." "Oh, that's a horrible idea," said the vizier, and he gave the king all kinds of reasons why this nasty policy of his was a bad idea. The lords and the ministers would give a great cry, there would be outrage, and if the people heard about it in the kingdom, there would be revolts, all kinds of horrible things would happen. But the king was determined. He was determined he would do this thing, and he could not be moved, and his will was the law. So the next day, with trouble in his heart, the vizier went, and he chose a wife for the king from among the servant girls of that palace, knowing that this poor girl would be killed the following day. And they were married, the king and this servant girl, and they spent a day together, pretty much. The king was a busy guy. He had to talk to the ministers, he had battles to plan, soldiers to talk to, stuff like that, but they spent some time together. And that night, the two of them retired to the royal bedroom, and the next morning, she was killed. And just as the vizier had said, the lords and the ministers were outraged. There was outrage of all kinds in that castle. Everybody was like, "You can't do this," but the king said, "I can and I will." A week later, he did the same thing again. The vizier selected a servant girl, they were married in the morning, and she was killed the next day. So this went on for some time. Now the vizier, he had a wife and 2 children of his own, 2 daughters. The eldest was named Scheherazade, and the youngest was named Dinarzade. And he was a troubled man at this point, having to do this terrible work of selecting a servant girl to be married to the king and then killed the next morning. It was a horrible thing. So he was a troubled man, and his family could see this. But it was Scheherazade who finally spoke to him. One evening she went to her father and said, "Father, what is troubling you?" And he told her the whole story of what was going on over at the palace. And she'd heard rumors of this in the city, but now she heard the truth from her father's own mouth. And she understood where the trouble in his eyes had come from. So they had a quiet dinner together, the vizier and his family, and then late at night, when everyone was about to go to sleep, Scheherazade went to her father, who was sitting by the fire, looking into the embers of that fire and thinking dark thoughts. And Scheherazade went to him, and she said, "Father, I have a request." "Yes, my child." "I wish to be married to the king tomorrow morning." "What? You wish to be his wife? He will kill you the next day." "I know, father, but that is my heart's desire." "You can't do that," he said. So he objected in all kinds of ways, and he told her why it was certain death to be the king's wife. But Scheherazade said simply, "Father, I have a plan." And she would not reveal this plan to him, but she was determined in her will, and just as the king could not be swayed from his cruel practice of killing his wives, so Scheherazade could not be swayed from her plan and her wish and her desire. So finally the vizier relented and gave his permission. And then everyone in that family went to sleep. But in the bedroom they shared, Scheherazade and Dinarzade began whispering. And Scheherazade said, "Oh, my sister, I have a plan. Tomorrow morning I will marry the king. We will spend some time together in the day and in the night. And when we are about to go to sleep, I will tell the king that I have one last request, and that is to see you, my dear sister. I do not think the king will refuse me this wish. So you will be sent for, you will be brought to the royal bedroom, we will embrace and say sweet words, and then, my sister, you must say these words. Oh, my sister, if you are not sleepy, please tell us a story. And then I will tell a story to you and to the king, which will free our kingdom of his cruelty, and it will free the king himself from his own cruelty. Can you do that?" "Yes, I can," said Dinarzade. So the two of them went to sleep, happy in their hearts at the thought of their plan. Now the next morning the vizier took Scheherazade to the palace, and he presented her to the king. And the king was surprised. "Your own daughter, vizier? Your own daughter?" "Yes, indeed," said the vizier, "for she wants nothing more than to be your wife." The king was surprised at this, but secretly he was pleased. So the two of them were married, and they spent some time together in the day. They walked in the palace garden and stuff like that. But it was true, the king had to talk to his generals and look at the new horses and all kinds of stuff like that, so they didn't spend a lot of time together. But they had dinner that evening, and then when night fell, they retired to the royal bedroom. And when they were about to go to sleep, Scheherazade spoke and said, "Your Majesty, I have one last request, and it is to see my dear sister Dinarzade one more time before I am killed in the morning." Well, the king granted this request, and Dinarzade was sent for, and she came to that royal bedroom. And she and her sister embraced, and they exchanged sweet words, and tears fell from their eyes. For it was very possible that this was indeed the last time they would see each other in this life. For who knew if the plan Scheherazade had would actually work? And then everyone prepared to go to bed. And Dinarzade then spoke, and she said, "Oh, my sister, if you are not sleepy, please tell us a story." And the king said, "Yes, yes, please do tell us a story." So Scheherazade said, "Oh, my king, once upon a time there was a poor elderly fisherman, whose custom it was to cast his net every day 4 times into the sea. So one day he went to the seashore. The gulls were crying in the air, the waves were laughing and collapsing against the sand. And he took his net, and he lifted it up, and he cast it into the water. Whew, splash! And he waited a little while for the sea to do its work, and then he took hold of that net, and he began to pull it out of the sea. But he found it was filled with some great heavy thing. He pulled again. Oh, he could not get that net out of the sea. So he took off his clothes, he dove into the water, and he looked down at that net to see what was inside. And he found that inside his net there was a dead donkey. Oh boy, a dead donkey. I can't eat that. My children can't eat that. This is horrible. So he spent some time disentangling that donkey from the net and getting it out of there. And the great weight of the donkey had made extra big holes in the net. So now he took it on shore and he spent some time repairing that net. And then he moved a little further down the shore. He said a prayer to Allah and he threw that net into the sea. Whew, splash! Once again, he waited for the sea and the currents to do their work. And then he took hold of that net, and he pulled on that net. And there was something in it, not as heavy as a donkey, but something. What was it, a fish, possibly? He pulled it out, and he saw that in his net there was a clay jar. This is interesting. Maybe there's gold coins in there, or something magical. Who knows, said the fisherman. So he got it up on the sand, he took his knife, and he pried out the stopper at the top of that jar. Pry, and then pop, it came out, and he looked inside, and he found inside that jar there was mud and sand. Just mud and sand, that was it. He dumped it out on the ground, that's it, nothing. A few shells, no gold pieces, not a statue, nothing. Oh boy, this is not my days, said the fisherman. All right, well, he cleaned his net out, moved down the shore a little bit, and for a third time he took hold of that net and cast it into the sea. Whew, splash! And he waited a little time, and then he took hold of that net and began pulling on the ropes, pulling it into shore. There was something in it, not as heavy as the jar, not as heavy as the donkey, but something. Maybe it's fish. Finally, he said, maybe we'll have dinner tonight, inshallah. And then he pulled that net out, and he saw that his net was filled entirely with cracked plates and broken shells. Oh boy, this is no good either. Well, he cleaned the net out. He repaired it once again. By this time, it was the middle of the afternoon, and he moved further down the shore. And finally, for a fourth and final time, he prepared to throw it into those waters. But this time he said a great and luminous prayer to Allah, Lord of the three worlds. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdina siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladina alayhim garil. Maghdubi alayhim walid dolin. Amen. Allah, Lord of the three worlds, from you all the blessings come, protector and giver and maker of this place. Please, I ask for your blessing. I have been faithful. I come every day with my net. 4 times I cast it into these great waters of possibility, these waters out of which all things come. Please, Allah, I ask for your blessing. Inshallah, we shall eat tonight. Inshallah, we shall eat tonight. And he took hold of the net and he threw it into the sea. And he waited a little while, and then he took hold of the ropes of that net, and he began to pull it out. But this time there was something heavy in it once again. Not another dead donkey, he said. We can't eat a dead donkey. He pulled again. Something very heavy was in there. So he took off his clothes once more, dove into the sea, and dove down to see what was in that net. And in that net he found a jar, a very old jar covered in barnacles. So he rolled it out of the water and onto the sand. It was a brass jar. It shone in the sun there. And with this his heart filled with happiness. For they could not eat the jar for supper, but he could sell it in the market. And with that money he could buy food for his family, for his children, his dear wife, and for himself. Well, this is all right, he said. This is all right. And he propped the jar up on the sand, and he took a good look at it. Covered in barnacles, it had been in the ocean for a long time. And at the top there was a lead stopper. And there was part of a word up there, King's Soul, it said, and there were some barnacles in the way. King's Soul, he thought to himself. Wait a minute, that could be King Solomon. But wait, King Solomon died 2,000 years ago. There's no way this is a jar of his. Well, let's see what's in there, he said. So he took his knife, and he began to pry away that lead stopper at the top. Pry, and then it came off, pop, and he looked inside, and that jar was filled with nothing at all. Zero, zilch, nada. There was nothing in the jar. No gold coins, no magical things, nothing at all. So he slumped down into the sand. He was tired. It had been a rough day. Well, there's nothing in there, but at least I can sell it at the market and get some money for it. At least that, he said. So he rested there a bit, as the gulls cried in the air, as the sun shone down, and the waves curled and flashed and crashed against the shore. And then something began to happen. He looked, and he noticed a little flicker of green smoke coming out of the top of the jar, coming out of the top and curling down the side. His eyes opened wide. What is this? He said. There's a fire in there? There can't be a fire in there. That came from the sea. The smoke came pouring down the sides, more and more of it. He stood up. He stepped back. It hit the sand, and then it rose up into the air. More and more green smoke, thick and dark green smoke. Pretty soon there was a large cloud above him in the air, taller than the tallest tree. He looked back at that cloud. He looked at it. Wait, what was that? It looked like a shoulder there, an arm, a kneecap. It was taking the shape of a man. There was a sword at his side, 2 big glaring eyes, and then it was a man standing right there, a gigantic man. And he said, "Aha, fisherman, today is your lucky day." "Oh, this is great," said the fisherman. "This is great. This is a genie. I let a genie out of a jar, and now he's going to give me some magical gift, like 3 wishes or something. This is great." And the genie said, "Ah, fisherman, this is your lucky day. Today I'm going to kill you, and you get to choose how it's going to be done." "What?" said the fisherman. "You're going to kill me?" "Yes, indeed, I'm going to kill you. Most people don't get to choose how they die, but you do. Isn't that great? So make up your mind, and I will get it done right away." "You can't do that," said the fisherman. "I was kind to you. I let you out of that jar, and you're going to destroy me? That's not the way things should go." "Oh, yes, it is," said the genie. "For you see, I am an evil genie. I rebelled against Allah and against King Solomon himself. King Solomon, that magical king who could speak to animals, birds, and beasts, who could control the weather, who on a cloudless summer day could make a lightning bolt come shattering down out of the sky to shatter a stone into 1,000 pieces. He was a magical man, and I fought him, and I almost won, I tell you. But finally he defeated me, and he stuffed me into this jar and had me thrown 1,000 miles out to sea. So I was out there a long time, and as soon as I got down there, I said to myself, well, maybe somebody will find me. Some fisherman will fish me out of here, and if that happens, I'm going to give that lucky person 3 wishes, because I will be so grateful at being released from this jar. Well, 500 years went by. Nobody found me. Nobody found me at all. I was down there in the dark basement of the sea, rolling around. Nothing happened. So then I said to myself, well, if somebody lets me out now, I'm pretty angry, so I'm just going to give them 1 wish. 1 wish, and that's it, but they'll get that 1 wish. Well, 500 years went by again. Nothing happened. About 300 years in, a red crab crawled over the top of my jar. That was it. Nobody found me. So I got really angry at this point, and then I said to myself, now, if anybody finds me now, I'm just going to kill him, because I'm so angry for being in this jar. Well, 1,000 years went by. 1,000 years, my friend. Nothing happened. Nobody found me until today. This bright and shining day, you found me, opened me up, and here we are. So I'm going to kill you, although you do get to pick how it's going to be done. I don't think that's a good idea. No way, said the fisherman. You can't do that. Please don't. Have mercy. If you spare me, God will spare you. If you destroy me, God will destroy you. I don't think so, said the genie. That's not the way things happen. In fact, I'm sick of all this talk. I'm going to kill you right now. And he grabbed the fisherman and he slammed him down into the sand. He pulled out his big sword and held it high in the air. And he said, prepare to die, fisherman. And it was at this point that Scheherazade stopped speaking, for the light of the sun had come through the windows of the royal bedroom. And Dinarzade said, "Oh, my sister, what a marvelous and amazing story." "Yes," said Scheherazade, "and if the king lets me live, tomorrow night I will tell you the rest of the story of the fisherman and the genie." "We'll see," said the king. But in his heart of hearts he said to himself, "I'll let her live for another day, for I just have to hear how this story of the fisherman and the genie ends." Well, the 3 of them slept for some time, and then they went out into the world. And the king had a meeting that morning with his ministers, his vizier, all his advisors and people like that, and he gave orders about what would happen during the day, and he heard all kinds of things, but he did not give an order for Scheherazade to be killed. When that meeting was over, everyone left the room except the vizier, Scheherazade's father, and he stood in that room, looking straight at the wall, looking out into the distance. And then suddenly he gave a little hop of excitement, and he knelt down and he kissed the ground, and he gave thanks to Allah that his daughter Scheherazade was alive for another day. Hello. Thank you for listening to this podcast, and thank you for entering into this story with me, this wild and interesting story from the Middle East. The story we know as the Arabian Nights, or the beginning of that story. The Arabian Nights as a whole is this huge collection of stories, and this is just the beginning, one part of it, of course. And as always, I would urge you to find a way to connect with this story in your own way. That connection will teach you more about this story than anything I can say. So if you got to stop the podcast, do that. If you got to take a walk around the block, whatever it takes, just remember this story and keep it with you and see what rings out for you, what annoys you or what you like about the story, what you don't like, what sizzles for you in this story, what detail grabs you. If you can do that, that will go a long way towards you finding a connection to this story and learning from this story. But that said, I'll go ahead and just say for me, the ocean is what really grabs me. That wonderful moment when the elderly, poor fisherman is there casting his net into the sea. And when I hear that in this story, it's hard not to forget that the context of this, right? Because this is a story being told by Scheherazade to her husband, the king, who's this evil, nasty tyrant, right? Who marries a woman, kills her after a day and a night with her. So he is horrible, and she has to find a way to cure him of his cruelty and save the kingdom. This is a story to tell to a tyrant. It is medicine for tyrants. It's a way to change someone's behavior when you're in a tight spot. And Scheherazade is in a tight spot. She volunteered for it, but she's in a tough place, no question. And so she tells a story about someone else in a tight place, the fisherman facing the genie who is much more powerful than him, who's magical. And how is the fisherman going to outwit this genie? How is Scheherazade going to cure the king? Those two things echo together. So I feel that when I get to this moment of the fisherman at the shore. And also it's nighttime, right? Scheherazade is telling this in the dark, in a dark room, a bedroom, at night. And then we have this ocean of stories, it seems like to me. If you want to go there, you could say it's the ocean of the unconscious, perhaps. But in any case, it seems to me like an ocean of possibility. What's going to come out of this ocean? Is it going to be garbage, a dead donkey, a cracked bottle? Or is it going to be something more, something magical? Like a jar, and there's even a dead end, right? There's a clay jar. Ooh, a jar. There could be something in there, and then, mud and sand. But then there comes the real jar, the brass jar with a real genie inside it. She makes us wait for it, right? And she shows that this ocean of possibility can dredge up garbage as well as it can dredge up magic at the same time. So I'm drawn to that moment when the fisherman casts his net into the sea. And in some ways, it seems like Scheherazade casting about for a story, perhaps. And when you tell a story, of course, words jump into your mouth. You're not exactly sure what you're going to say. I don't mean to be too exotic about it, but you have the story, you have all the images in your head, but then you just say it and a strange word might come in. Sometimes it's not the right word. Sometimes it is a dead donkey of a word, and sometimes it's magic. So she seems in some ways to be talking about her own art, her own skill, her own situation when she describes this fisherman at the sea there. Now, there's a love in the Arabian Nights for stories within stories. And of course, that's what this is. The fisherman and the genie story is inside the story of Scheherazade and the king. But their story is also inside a larger cosmology, which is different from like a Grimm's fairy tale, for example, let's say. Which doesn't depend on that so much. This is a story which takes place in a region where there's a history. And I'm just talking about the fiction here. I'm just talking about the story world. But this story world has a history, and it connects to the real world because there's a vision, there's a larger story here of God fighting the genies. Now, who are the genies? The genies are beings created by God before humans, and they're made of fire. Angels are made of light, the genies are made of fire. So God made them, and some of them rebelled against God, against Allah. And there was a big fight, and a key player in this fight was the King Solomon. Solomon appears in the Bible. In the Islamic world, he's much more magical. He's something of a heroic figure, kind of like King Arthur and Merlin put together, perhaps. He's very powerful. His power comes from his knowledge of the secrets of this earth. Solomon could talk to all the animals. He could control the wind. He could control the weather. He could do many amazing things. He was a master of technology as well. As we shall see, some of these stories read like science fiction stories. It's really, really amazing in that way. So King Solomon was a serious character, and he fought all the evil genies, and eventually he won, had them jammed into bottles, and they got spread across the earth pretty much for one reason and another, and many were in the sea. And all this happened thousands of years ago, several thousands of years ago before this story. So that's the backstory to what's going on. Anybody hearing this story in the Islamic world, the Middle East, would know that story and just know that genies are out there in bottles. So that's the backstory here. And then, of course, the fisherman stumbles upon one of these genies, and he's an evil genie, and he's angry from being in that jar. And so again, we get this story of power relations and how is he gonna do it? How's he gonna beat the genie? Which we will find out. So I guess I'm not going to say much more because we got a story going on here, and what's going to happen to that fisherman, we don't know. But I will say thanks to everyone who's supported this podcast. If you're able to support the podcast, please do so. I have a Patreon thingamajig. Also on my website, there's information on that, as well as many other stories as well. Thanks, and here comes part 2.